Welcome everyone to our 5th Starcraft 2 Weekly Whine Live. I'm your host Ace, and today I'm joined by my good friends Miro and Brock. I set this up because I always enjoy open and honest conversations about balance, and I feel like this can be hard to find in the community. So I hope to do my small part to change that with the show. If you enjoy, please consider giving a like and subscribe. With that out of the way, let's dive into this week's topic. Early game options, or openers if you prefer. I'd like to just have a little conversation about the options that are available for the different races in each matchup in the early game, and kind of what that leads to a little bit in the late game, or mid game and then late game. And to start this off, I want to show a clip from recent GSL. I think this is Group A. This is Game 2 of Classic versus Rogue, so spoilers. But I thought this was a good place to start because this it was a moment that I really enjoyed seeing from Tasteless. He does this every now and then where he'll just like kind of digest how he's thinking about a matchup like in real time while he's casting. And I love that because you get to see him like just, you know, really turn this stuff over in his head and see how he's thinking about it. And him and State going back and forth on this was very interesting. So I wanted to start with that because it's, you know, thoughts that I've also been having recently. But I'm going to play that and then we'll discuss.
Yeah, the early game was pretty rough there for Rogue. Thinking back to game number 1, everything was going Classic's way. Rogue kept trying to go for these counterattacks, kept trying to get some damage in, and Classic had an answer for absolutely everything. It wasn't until we had a Nidus in a blind spot in the main base of Classic that Rogue actually kind of got onto equal footing with the Protoss.
So, you know, one thing about, and this is not just true for StarCraft, it's true for a lot of RTS games, is sometimes one race really needs to win at a certain moment in the game, and the other race doesn't. And, you know, StarCraft 2, it's been patched so many times, so the matchups really do change constantly. But I'm going to use StarCraft 1 as an example here just because that wasn't patched, and so it's been consistent. 27 years of roughly games that look like this. But as an example, in a TVZ in StarCraft 1, the Terran tends to win in the middle of the game. Same thing with a TVP, because Terran has to push. In a ZVP, sorry, PVZ I should say, Protoss wins in the mid game because the Protoss has to push, which means Zerg tend to win either before or after that, right? They win in the late game a lot of times. And I think people are used to seeing Zerg win in the late game in StarCraft 2. But I think what's happened in the matchup now, and again, you know, patches come out, things change, and races become stronger or weaker at various points in the game, is I think Protoss might be in some ways kind of like the Zergy race in the late game, in that they are going to get an army that you might not be able to kill, right? And so that means, you know, the matchup for now may be one that Zerg really has to figure out how to kill Protoss before they get too big, which can be uncomfortable for, I think, a lot of Zerg players that are used to the matchup feeling a certain way or being a certain way. What do you think, State?
I agree with you. I think the important thing, if you want to try and play a late game as Zerg, is that you get to your late game composition before the Protoss is able to. And that means that you need to have a better early game or a mid game than the Protoss more often than not. It means you need to be able to outgreed them. You need to be able to deal with all the oracles. There are a lot of things that need to happen for Zerg to be in a position where it feels like their army is scaling better than the Protoss army is.
Right.
And even Rogue, I mean, the early game wasn't fantastic for Rogue there in the previous match, but you could see it with the Lurker Potion to the main base. The Tempest kind of put a timer on that, and it was a long timer because there were only a couple of them on the field. Rogue was able to take out the natural expansion, most of the probes there. He was able to take out nearly all of the infrastructure in the main base as well. But Classic had already navigated his way to an army composition that was just such a pain to deal with for Rogue. And whenever Protoss gets in that kind of position where they're able to train out all of the low-cost, low-value units such as Zealots, such as Stalkers, for basically pure Skytoss, Archon, Templar, and a Mothership, it is a near impossible situation for Zerg to overcome that unless they get the fight of their dreams. And I think even if they go for the fight of their dreams, it almost feels like Protoss needs to have a misstep. So for Zerg to succeed, it seems like they need to get an advantage before that point.
Yeah.
But it's very tricky. It's exactly what you said. It seems like the late game right now for Protoss, it's a little too troubling for Zergs to deal with.
And it also seems like, I mean, like what Rogue did in the last game, I thought was really smart. I mean, he basically pulled his strategy off, right? He had the Ninja Nidus pop up, right? You know, he did it right when the Protoss was maxed out. So there wasn't, you know, really a moment to warp in Zealots to get it. Even then, the Nidus was well hidden enough. Wasn't a whole lot that, you know, Rogue could do to stop, or sorry, Classic could do to stop it. And, you know, Classic had his whole main hollowed out. Okay, so we got a Ling attack over here, and with no Oracle to defend this, this is going to be forced to cancel.
Yeah, surprised that Classic didn't leave at least one Oracle back right now. He's going to warp in some Adepts, but eventually this will be canceled.
Yeah, well, I don't know why there weren't Adepts there to begin with.
Yeah, they're here.
Oh, that's
Rogue
why,
just
of
was
course.
able to skirt around the edges of the map, I suppose. Classic didn't catch it. Rogue trying to go back in and get another cancel. And the Oracles are pretty low on energy right now. See, Classic just charges one up. It's about to run out of energy. It just did. Some nice moves coming out by Rogue, and he follows it up with 10 more drones in production. These are the kind of early game wins that Rogue needs, that Zerg needs to build up some momentum heading into the mid and late game. I mean, already Classic's build, it's got a wrench thrown in the works. Things have not gone to plan.
Okay, so he's going to try to clear out this Overlord. Rogue's continuing to grow out. We've got Blink halfway done. More Oracles. This looks like it's probably going to be the Stalker Blink stuff we saw in the last game. I think with Classic, you don't need to do anything different or special here. I don't know why you would. I mean, basically, the mid-late game, I guess, backfired horribly for Classic, and he's still... Was there something that popped up on screen over Classic's face for a second? Did you see that?
Oh, I was looking at the Oracles.
I don't know what happened. It almost looked like he had
like a filter or something?
Yeah, I don't know. It was like cat ears were on his head. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was some Discord thing. I don't know. Anyways,
I gotta go back and watch the VOD after
I don't know. Maybe I'm hallucinating, and you guys are watching the first thing that went wrong in my brain before I went
He's
insane
not
and ended up in a mental asylum
Not
just a
hallucinating
year
that,
later.
hold on.
No.
Started here. So mass lings. And, you know, Protoss is moving out. Nice blink over here to actually shave off a couple more of these lings. There is charge coming up behind this, by the way.
That's some nice moves coming out by Classic.
So
Rogue.
this might be a very different game.
Rogue trying to go into Hydralix behind all of this. Hydralix nearly done. 10 more lings in production. We might have a critical mass of Stalkers, though. This is a difficult position.
Okay.
Oh, look at that choke point on a Winter Madness here. Yeah, the early game was pretty rough
much
there
the
for
end of
Rogue.
that clip
Thinking back to
there.
game.
Okay. So, reason why I brought that up, I think it's a good place to start because this kind of inspired the topic of this week. You know, I think that's a really good way to think about this kind of stuff. You know, like how do these options progress into these different states? And this is a good game to look at, not just because of what they were talking about with the previous game, but also because of how this game is progressing. And the sorry for the, I don't know what that is, deinterlacing. But when he gets the cancel on this third here, so we had to make a bunch of extra lings to actually get this done. See those on the board here, right over here. He made like a decent amount of extra lings to get this done. And Classic was totally out of position here. And it didn't seem to matter very much anyway. Because, you know, you're able to get the damage on the other side of the map with the Oracle and the Adept, right? So he was able to equalize what he was delayed, but, you know, the probes that he was making later at his third base there. And then we end up progressing to a point in the start of the mid game here where it's just the same as it would have been before. You know, feels like to me at least. Where you get this Oracle blink showing up and it's like we're pretty much in the same situation. So Zerg ended up going for, you know, risky but potentially good payoff kind of, you know, somewhat aggressive move here. And it doesn't really seem to matter. You know, and this is like one of Zerg's, you know, primary options to try to slow down the Protoss in like early mid game. So I thought this was a good place to open the conversation, because that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here. Is like, there's differences in what's available to the different races at each point in the game, and like Tasteless and State we're talking about, that's important because this is an asymmetrically balanced game. So we have races being stronger or weaker at different stages of the game and having various power spikes. We could also, of course, look at the SC2 pulse charts for that. I'll bring these up here. But yeah, I'll put the floor to you guys if you have anything you wanna add to this here. Not I have any more to say.
I do, but I'd also be curious to hear Brock's thoughts about this, because he's thinking about it more from the Protoss side, I would assume.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I guess I kind of have some of that, but at the same time, not really, because you have to have, because you don't want the races to be the same. Of course, there's different points where one race is more powerful than the other. There's not really a way around it. I think the issue people have is they think those windows are either too big or too small in the matchup. And that also just kind of goes with shifts in the meta, and depending on how, if there is a patch or the map pool potentially and stuff. So there is some variation just based off of that, potentially from ladder season to season. And the patches, of course, will affect that when they do rebalance or tweak things, even if it doesn't happen as regularly as it used to.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because looking at the game specifically, right? When the game, when Rogue did his Ling Flood to cancel the third base, we see he's behind on drones. The advantage that he gets out of this is he gets the cancellation, he brings back the oracles. The oracles didn't do any damage because he actually warded off pretty much all of the oracle damage with the queens, and the adepts were mostly countered by a couple of lings that were there in addition to the queens. So Classic really didn't do enough with his oracles and adepts to make it worth it.
Well,
where the downside was that Rogue sunk a lot of money and a lot of lava into those lings, which kind of put him behind. By the time the third was coming up, Classic was already ahead on workers, and Rogue is already ahead on workers. At the end of the Ling Flood, we see Rogue does a big swell of drones, and he kind of takes the drone lead there and starts fourth base around the same time. So he does end up ahead, but it's not a significant, it's not, in my opinion, a significant enough amount ahead.
And it's also
actively matter.
He reached a point where he was ahead in workers momentarily after Classic had already been ahead for a significant amount of time. So it's Classic has already spent a significant amount of time mining more resources than Rogue. So then, he catches up and, temporarily surpasses Classic, but it doesn't hold. Right? And that's kind of the sorry, the player named Classic, but it's the classic story of PvZ, where Zerg is just trying to catch up in workers, and Protoss is usually ahead until we saturate our third.
Yeah, by the time the push comes from Classic, who retained all of his oracles, which, side note, good job on Classic, because you just don't see most Protoss players do that these days.
He had very good oracle control this game.
Classic's oracle control has always been very strong. It's been one of his strongest, the strongest points, I think, is his ability to retain oracles in comparison to someone like Hero, who is much more likely to throw them at the opponent to try and get just that little bit more damage done.
What? No way.
Yeah, who was that? Was that State? Who was he was freaking out recently because Hero he's like about to lose this Oracle, and he's retreating, and he's like, we're like, okay, whew. He's pulling back the Oracle. He's not going to be a maniac. And then at the last second, he's like, no, actually, I want that one last drone. He dives in.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? No, stop.
That was painful to watch. I was like, dude.
What I was going to say, that's a very classic hero moment, if you pardon the pun. What I was going to say is, like, at the start of that push, the stasis wards go down. Rogue has 65 drones to, I think, Classic's like 57 workers.
Yeah,
He's got his fourth base finishing up, but the difference for Classic is Classic has the tech, and Rogue is basically still just on Lings and kind of just barely getting Hydras out, if that. Right, so he's effectively still on lair tech, or still on essentially hatch tech. It's his Hydra Den is halfway through.
Yeah. He's like starting his Hydra Den here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so a couple things off of what you said, like, first of all, like, the way that Rogue is doing his Hydra here, like, this is normal, I would say, timing for Hydra Den, unless you were trying to, like, do the crazy fast Hydra thing, which is, like, not a thing lately. I don't know. I haven't really seen that in a while. I feel like that hasn't really been played ever since, like, Archon Drop left the meta.
I kind of feel like that hasn't really been played since they split the upgrades for Hydras.
Yeah, and that. It's another pretty significant reason. The other thing I was going to say, though, was Classic actually did get a pretty significant amount with the Oracle here. So, like, the first Oracle pass, he gets the, he gets the Oracle tax, right? He gets 4 workers. If I remember right here. We can see that here. And I think he might get a drone or 2 with the Adepts. I don't actually remember. I know he gets 4 drones with the Oracle here. And then with the second pass, he comes in and he gets 2 more drones with the Oracle. And then shortly after that, he gets 2 more drones with the 2 Adepts. And that's his tools for defending his third base. So you get what I'm saying? So it's like he has like a no committal option where it's like the worst case scenario, I'm even, right? And Rogue is like taking the gamble, and his best case scenario is that he's even. You get what I mean?
Yes.
Like, that's a significant problem.
I definitely get what you mean, and I guess that begs the question of, like, there's no such thing, I think, as optimal play, because every game is different and every person's reaction is different, but like it kind of begs the question as to what the right response is as well, or
Right.
perhaps what the most consistently mitigating response is to something like this, because
like what's the reliable way to deal with it?
And it begs the question of if going for that large Ling flood, try and delay the third, is the right response over just making more drones.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like that's kind of a little bit of what I'm getting at here, where it's like, the options that are available to the races are significantly different. Because if you look at what Zerg has available to them, what was that, Brock?
They should be, yeah.
Yeah, because the game is an asymmetrical game, you're not going to have the same options at the same time. But totally. I also think that there is an element where we've kind of swung too far in some cases, that the options one race has in a matchup greatly dwarfs the options that the other race has in the matchup during certain periods of time. And this isn't necessarily just early game or mid game or late game or whatever. It's just something that I think, and I think this does apply to some extent to all races, but not necessarily the same amount to all races.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, sorry. What I think is really more important, more than like who has like more options available, is more like the progression and then like the number of different choices that you have available. You know what I mean? Like, it's less about like, you know, do we have different things that we can do? It's more about like, you know, do we have different like viable options that lead to like meaningfully different states of the game? You know what I mean? It's like, because it feels like Zerg just doesn't have like a way to really influence the course of a lot of these games in the early and mid game, and that's like a huge problem that we're dealing with right now. Because you know, tying back to the thing that opened to this, like, if Protoss is essentially unbeatable late game if you reach there on equal footing, you have to get some sort of an advantage in the early and mid game. How do you do that? What are your options to do that as Zerg, right? So it's like, this is one of your options, and we can just clearly see here there's not a very good option. Because even when it works, because Classic is totally out of position here, it doesn't really seem to make a difference. Like, we end up with the same mid-game state we would be already, you know?
Yeah, it definitely didn't pan out the way he wanted it to.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the worst option, because he did at least get something done, where the worst option would be, I've committed to all of these lings and there's just nothing there.
Yeah. I mean, like, he technically got something done in that he canceled the third base, but he spent more than it required to do that, so it didn't really get him any advantages. And
there is something to be said about throwing your opponent off of their game plan, and
that's definitely true.
So, like, yeah, like directly no, but like indirectly there is probably more going on.
I would say, in this game, it did not throw Classic off of his game plan, because he still did the Blink Oracle build, which I'm guessing he was going to do already.
Probably.
Yeah, that's definitely. I think both good points, because like, attention is a resource in itself.
Yeah.
And it's very easy, particularly for players who are, you know, GM, Masters, Diamond, Platinum, like all the way down the ladder. As you go further down, you have less attention to spare for smaller things that will otherwise just break you and pull you apart. And as you go up into pro play, you have more attention that you can spare to smaller things, because a lot of what you're doing becomes muscle memory.
Yeah, totally. You don't have to think about it anymore. Yeah, that's like one of my favorite things to tell people when I'm coaching. It's like, you just got to make this stuff second nature, so that you have more brain capacity available to think about the larger questions about, like, you know, is he expanding? Do I want to play eco or aggressive in counter to that? You know, those kind of choices. I do want to go back to the Oracle thing, though, because so this is him coming in for the second time with the Oracle, and he sniped a tumor, and then after that gets a drone there, gets another tumor here, and then I think he gets a second drone. Maybe not. Okay, so just one drone. But then after that, we're gonna see BAM, and that's these adepts over here on the side there. He gets another 3 drones, so that's 7 in total from the early game. The first Oracle that showed up got 4, and then another one with the second pass of the Oracles, and then 2 more with these adepts right here. So all of this is happening because Rogue is across the map with his aggressive stuff, right? I mean, the Oracle's that's just sort of Oracle tax, right? But then you add in these additional 2 workers from here, right? And this is because Classic is out of position and Rogue is counterattacking, right? But like you can see, it doesn't really seem to matter. Is my point here.
Yeah, it's also kind of the perfect example of how effective multi-prong can be, right? Because if you're even if it's just two adepts like harassing on the third base and then the oracles harassing at the main base, now your attention is split, so you can't as effectively defend 2 locations as you can defend 1 location, because your attention is focused in 2 different places.
Anyway, I thought that was a good game to start looking at. You could probably look at some other games, though. We could go over here and see what we got here. We could look at a TVZ. Although it's probably not, any balance complaints here, to be perfectly honest. But it would be good to look at something in comparison and see how other mashups are a little bit more dynamic, maybe.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I wanted to throw up the chart. You know which chart I'm talking about. Hang on.
Oh, we're talking about the SC2 pulse chart.
Yeah, the SC2 pulse chart. Here, I'm going to pause this. Let's look at this instead. Is it showing up right? Oh, I have to... there we go. This chart. This is the chart I was looking at. And then, I mean, you should also be looking at this. So, like, these 2 charts together essentially tell you, like, the basic flow of each matchup and statistically what things are looking like. And yeah, there is a little bit of sample bias because this isn't, like, all ladder data, but it is pretty informative. So I think this is interesting if you look at, like we were just talking about ZVP, right? So look at ZVP, and we can see most games ends somewhere between, what is that, like 6 and 12 minutes, right? We can see if we look at win rate here. So this 50% line, meaning above this, Zerg is winning, below this, Protoss is winning. And this is the percentage of likelihood here. We can see, like, at about 3 minutes, Zerg has their best chance of winning the game. So this is like proxy hatch and 12 pool is what this is. Like, there's no other way. I mean, the other way would be, I guess, if Protoss cannon rushes and then fails. So those 3 things, I guess, technically,
I would
are what would lead to this.
Cannon rushing, failing, and then leaving the game, rather than cannon rushing, failing, and then transitioning out somehow.
Yes, yes. Yeah, they would have to leave immediately for this to, yeah. But then, after that, excuse me, Zerg has, like, barely above 50%, just, like, touching it at the 9-minute mark, which is this right here.
high timing, probably, that hits and kills, if I had to guess.
Yeah. It's a Ling Hydra, Ling Bane Hydra, but usually this is lurkers. Like, Ling Bane and Ling Hydra usually are like 7 and 8 minutes, you know?
Okay, yeah, fair.
And a lot of, I guess you could also say this is chart resolution too, because we don't have a point in between 6 and 9 minutes. So maybe it's just averaging to this, and the averaging makes it look really bad. But yeah, so this is kind of usually lurker timing, something Hydra based, right? Everything other than that is Protoss winning the game, which is insane. Because it's like, okay, if we're talking about, you know, options that are available to each race, right? Like, this is kind of crazy if we're looking at this situation. And then when you combine it with this chart, you can see that, like, most of these games are ending somewhere in this range, right? And you could say, like, okay, so the matchup being roughly balanced with most of these games ending around this roughly balanced stage right here, Like, as far as win rates goes, you know, that's not a terrible situation, right? The thing that makes this bad is the context of this being the only other chance for Zerg and this just being all Protoss. Like, that's nuts. If you're looking at, you know, what Zerg can actually do here, it's like, it becomes very clear why this is why it is.
I mean, so I'm not going to say the chart isn't accurate, but I do want to emphasize that those are percentages ranging from like 45%. Like, it doesn't dip below 45% until I think that's like
Sure.
18-ish minutes. So, like, I mean, it's not like it's, oh, like 7 out of 10 times process win. It's like, no, more like 6 out of 10 times process win. It's like, yeah, or no, that's not even, that's 11 out of 20 times.
No, it's
so it's
way less.
It's not like it's super bad in all fairness, but like,
totally.
yeah, you want it to be as close to 50% as possible. So like even 45%, like I think you were telling me about this like a couple months ago. Like there was a point in like a matchup where it was like 42 to like 48 to like 58% was like the worst a matchup has been, and like that was extreme. So it's like even then, that's still
Right.
more than like 4 out of every 10 times. So
Yeah, so that's actually kind of interesting that you bring that up. Like, I don't remember exactly what I was talking about there. I was probably talking about like a Ligulac and comparing like the current state of Protoss to like Terran and Wings of Liberty, if I remember.
yeah, I think
right.
it was Wings or Heart of the Swarm. It was one of the two.
Yeah. But actually, like, so another thing that's important to know here is that like humans are crazy about this. Like, the perception of fairness, like, we are hyper attuned to this kind of thing. And I remember, gosh, this was like 2017 or something like that. I can't even remember what matchup it was, but if I remember right, Blizzard said something about, they gave some number, and the number was like, it was like not bad at
5%.
all. It was off by like 1.5% or some shit like that. But everybody was like
I think-
freaking out about the matchup at the time, you know, and that was kind of interesting to me, because it kind of showed me that, you know, as far as statistically, it might not look that bad, but the thing is, humans don't look at it from 0 to 100. We look at it within this like 5% range, because anything beyond that, and we're like, I'm just gonna quit. You know, like, why would I do that? You know, like, that's kind of the way people think, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
you know,
something I kind of want to point out, is that there's Blizzard has in the past, and granted this was a very long time ago, I think it was like Heart of the Swarm, has said that if a matchup is within 5% win rate, so let's say, you know, 47 to 50, 52, you know, on in that direction. If it's within 5%, then it's generally considered balanced. If it's outside of those parameters, they're starting to get a little bit concerned. And if it's kind of within, like, if it's kind of outside of the 10% range, then you're starting to have a lot of really big problems at that point. If it's beyond 55% or 45%, you're in a really, really problematic state.
yeah. I would generally agree with that. I'd say that as far as like things feeling good, we should aim for tighter than that range. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
we don't want to. We want to
that's
be.
the
We want to be in
underlying sentiment
5%
of what they're
range,
saying.
not in the 10% range.
Right. It's not like ignore it until it gets outside of the 5% range. It's like, you know, we want to aim for within that, and ideally even tighter within that. It's kind of how I think of that.
The problem is, because this game is asymmetrically balanced, it is incredibly hard to maintain a situation where a race is winning within 5%, where where both races in the matchup have the equal opportunity to, or near equal opportunity to win throughout the game. If that makes sense. So in
Yeah.
their respective stage of the game, because you have to have the point of balance where it is, okay, let's say that Terran wins during this point of the game, and Protoss wins during this point of the game, and Zerg wins during this point of the game. For Terran to win, they have to be able to win 55% of their win rate during this percent of the game, and 45% of the win rate during Protoss's 55%.
Right.
And so
No,
Protoss
totally.
has to be able to hold the aggression, but also has to be capable of dying to the aggression if they don't do the right thing.
Right. No, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. Because, yeah, I mean, it's like, we want the game to have asymmetric balance. Like, I love the power spikes. You know, that's like one of my main complaints about the way modern StarCraft has been balanced. Because, like, TVZ, I think, is a great example. Like, modern TVZ, you know, we're talking, like, 25, 30-minute games are very common. And I hate that. I liked it a lot more in early Legacy of the Void. I know a lot of people are gonna hate that, but
So
it's just
I'm gonna
how I enjoyed it.
throw back to just how old I am with relation to this game. I loved the Heart of the Swarm Biomine versus Lingbane Muta style. That was a
Yeah, I've seen a few of
constant
those.
back and forth streaming,
Those were fun, yeah.
literally never letting up on either side.
I mean, I
aggression.
remember playing that in Legacy of the Void.
Yeah,
you know,
probably
before
very
the,
early Legacy of the
Before
Void.
Widow Mines and Banelings were both nerfed into the ground.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, it's not that bad, but like they both were nerfed pretty hard.
Hey, Banelings used to only cost 15 gas. You're right. Maybe we should consider that.
Wait,
15.
what? When was this?
When was that, dude? I don't think they ever cost 15 gas.
Wait, what?
Wasn't that a thing? Wasn't that like Heart of the Swarm was Banelings only cost?
No, like maybe early Wings of
Uh.
Liberty, like really early Wings of Liberty. I don't think they ever cost 15
Yeah,
gas.
I don't remember that ever being a thing, but I didn't play Wings or Hots, so. You might be thinking what I was talking about, and you might be thinking of was the bonus damage being like more specialized versus light, rather than just having like standard all around damage. And I think they did that twice. Because Banelings
So-
used to, I mean, like we used to use Banelings versus Marauders. We would just not care.
You want a fun fact? Banelings actually used to do 15 damage to armored and plus 20 versus light in Wings of Liberty. Really,
kinda crazy.
really early Wings of Liberty, and they changed it in patch 1.4. They swapped it so it did 20 to armored and plus 15 versus light.
Huh. Wow.
Or yeah, no, they changed it in patch 6. Sorry, so it was really
Interesting to
early
see.
Wings of Liberty.
How they've changed that so many times now.
Yeah, it's been changed a few times.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think it's ever cost 15 gas, as far as I'm aware. I can't see it in patch. So
All right. Fine. Throw this up again. Let's see, what do we want to look at? Do we want to look at a PVT now? We talked a lot about
so
PVT.
we were originally going to look at TVZ, which I'm happy to look at if you want.
Yeah, I think we kind of don't need to be honest.
So
TVZ feels pretty good.
TVZ feels pretty good, but statistically it's a bit funky. I know from looking at the Aligulac and SC2 Pulse stats, the stats are... And granted, some of this is due to the fact that there's just significantly less games played of TVZ than there are of PVT and ZVP. So there's going to be some variation just based off that alone, but there is an element where it kind of feels a lot more even when you're playing, but the stats don't necessarily reflect that at the moment.
Oh yeah, actually, I'm looking at the stats now, and they're kind of crazy. Here, I'll put them
Yeah,
up.
so TVZ last month was at 54% for Terran, at 55% in March. But, you know, there was like 500 games that were taken.
Right.
So
I was looking at SC2 Pulse. Hang on, I'll put
now
the
I will
Ligulac up, though.
I will say with regards to Ligulac, it was recently acquired by someone else. I think it was, I want to say the guy's name is like Stegosaurus or something like that. He partners
That
with
sounds
Pig
right.
to do he partners with Pig to do the Pigasaur cups. So Ligulac has come on a new ownership. I don't know if they've changed anything with their algorithm as to how they get the stats, but
Doesn't look like it.
this is what we have at the moment. It doesn't look like it, but it is something to be aware of.
Yeah, you never
and
know.
going back to SC2 Pulse, if you look, they have the individual map data, and you can kind of see which maps tend to go
All
one
of them?
way or the other as well. A fair amount of them do go Terran way, and
All of them but two, apparently.
Yes, but specifically, there's 3 maps specifically that are kind of really obnoxiously favored for Terran: Old Republic and Taito Citadel, which on a personal note, I fucking hate Taito Citadel as a Terran. I don't know why that's Terran favored.
Celestial Enclave is even worse, actually.
Rising, yeah, Celestial Enclave, sorry, is the third one that I was thinking. They're kind of like, they're 54, 55%, and everything else is within that 52, 53% or
Right.
50% in the case of 10,000 feet. So the average win rate is like 52% across the board if you average all the maps together, but yeah, it's still a lot more than you expect it to be, because it doesn't feel that egregious.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at these graphs here, it's like this is actually way crazier than I was expecting it to be, with this 60% spike for Terran at 9 minutes here, and most games ending at 9 minutes.
And I think a big part of that has to do with perception, right? When you play the game, on both sides, it feels like the damage that you do as a Terran and the damage that you take as a Terran from a Zerg feels really impactful. So it feels like at any moment, it's like a knife's edge where it can go one way or the other. If you throw your army away, you're immediately dead. If you take too much damage as a Zerg, you are immediately dead. But the same goes for Terran. If you throw your army away as a Terran, you die immediately and you will never come back. Like, I'm obviously hyperbole to some extent, but
I don't know. I don't know if I even agree with that. Like,
you get my point, is that it feels very knife's edge for both sides.
I would say it feels more skill based. It's a lot more mechanical, so it feels a lot more skill based. And the other thing is, because of that, there's a lot more like opportunity to recover, because it's like when you're ahead, like as either race in that position in that matchup, like usually you just have like a lot of shit that you need to control, and if you don't control it right, it's very easy to lose that lead. But if we're talking about like it being on a knife's edge, I would say, like, I mean, PvZ is way more like that than TvZ. Like PvZ, it's like you lose 2 extra drones, it's like you might as well just leave the game. There's no recovery.
My point with me saying it's on a knife's edge is that for it to be on a knife's edge, it's on a knife's edge for both players, where, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brock, because I'm looking at it from the outside point of view, it doesn't quite feel that way for ZVP or TVP, where for the Protoss, it doesn't feel quite as knife's edge if you fuck up once you die.
It can. Like, if you get your robo units reset, that can easily be game ending right there.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
But if you're playing like Gateway Man style or something like that, no, not so much.
Yeah. So, whereas if you're looking at TVZ, like, it's very easy for, if you fuck up on either side, then you can, the match can swing wildly in favor of the other player. And if they fuck up on the other side after that, then it can swing wildly the other way. And so there, like you said, there's always the ability to, the potential ability to recover, and that doesn't feel that way against Protoss as a Terran or Zerg, at least not currently. And so the knife's edge thing feels like it comes down to skill and control, and the better control feels like it wins. And from the point of view, again, from the point of view of a Terran, it doesn't necessarily feel that way when you're playing as playing against Protoss. It just kind of always feels like an uphill battle. And this is not me trying to harp on Protoss and say, oh, Protoss is overpowered, because yeah, there are definitely.
that's part of what we're here to do.
Okay, this is called the Balance Whine, the weekly whine. I'm not going to sit there and say that I don't think Protoss has problems, because I really, really do. But I'm also
really
not going to
does.
sit here and say. I'm also not going to sit here and say I think they are definitively overpowered in every metric, because they're not. They're not definitively overpowered in every metric.
Yeah.
But they
for sure.
are very strong in a lot of points in the game.
Yeah.
Especially traditionally points where they haven't been as strong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, totally. Because, like, if I had to summarize, like, the problems that I have with the options that are available for the different races early on in each matchup, like, the issues with fighting Protoss right now, it just feels like there's no way to get damage against Protoss. Like, it just feels like they're just impervious. And on the flip side, like, you're watching the Protoss do what feels like whatever they want, and it doesn't seem to matter what you do. And, like, that just doesn't feel good. You know what I mean? Because, like, you know, if we're looking at comparing to TVZ and things like that, it's like, I'm not unaware of this crazy power spike for Terran right here. And, like, to be honest, if I, you know, if we look at the stats here, like TVZ and PVZ, you know, they're similarly bad for Zerg right now, and have been for a while, you know? But the reason why it feels so much crazy bad versus Protoss there is because, like, the mechanical requirement is way different. You know, it feels like it's more like just a build order, like, choice thing, where it's like Protoss just chooses whatever they want, and it doesn't seem to matter what you choose. You're always going to end up in the same situation where you're getting blink all in or whatever. You know, whatever they wanted to do, it's just going to happen to you anyway. You know? Yeah,
I think there's something to be said for the mechanical requirement, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Brock, because I'm not looking for an echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
From my point of view, it comes across as the only real skill-based units that Protoss seems to have currently is the Oracle to some extent, because it's very easy to...
I'd say definitely the Oracle.
It's very easy to lose the Oracle because of how clunky it can be in the...
Oracles are crazy hard to control.
Yeah,
They're actually super clunky. So yeah.
Phoenixes, which you basically never see outside of PvP for some reason, despite the fact that they're actually really good units. Stalkers and Warp Prison. And that's kind of it.
I mean, the Adept.
You can argue Yeah, I guess.
The adept is definitely a skill-based unit. Adept control is, it's not as difficult as Oracle control, but it's definitely hard.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say the adept, but I get what you mean by that. But I feel like you have to include Disruptor and High Templar. I mean, to an extent, every spellcaster I would
I would
say
not
is.
include High Templar. I, th- I think High
Okay,
Templar are insanely easy to use. Disruptors, though, I'll give you that.
I kind of see where Brock is coming from, because the High Templar had the range nerf on its spell recently, so it does make them a little bit more challenging to use in that aspect, because they
You might
aren't
be
able
right.
to cast Storm.
I actually haven't used High Templar since the range nerf, I don't think, so you might be totally right there. Maybe they're a lot harder to use
Well,
now.
especially in like PvT, because like if you don't pre-spread, if you can't keep your High
God.
Templars in a clump, one EMP, and all of a sudden your 6 High Templars have no storm, and then your army just gets jumped on. Like,
Well,
yes.
2 EMPs, because you always have to double tap Templar. Otherwise, it is the most terrifying thing when you drop an EMP on a pack of Templar, and suddenly 6 storms are still dropping on your army anyway. It's like what
Murray,
the fuck?
I got a
You
High
should
Templar.
have no energy.
Now's my chance. Oh my god, what the fuck is this storm? Where did this come from?
I had that the other day. I was playing a TVP, and like I got the perfect EMP, and I'm like, okay, good, I can dive in and engage, and I kill the Colossus, and then all the storms happen. I'm like, where did these come from?
You're just like, I'm sorry, what?
Like, I did. There's the meme of the guy blinking. He's like, what the fuck? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
No, I definitely see where you're coming from, though, Brock.
But besides that, I would say I feel like Tempest has to be at least an honorable mention, because Tempest actually suck if you're not good with them. But beyond that, like Zealots, Immortals, Colossus, Archons, like, yeah, those aren't really skill-based units, like, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the
give it
distinction is it because I mean, like, every unit in the game, it takes skill. Like, by the same token, you could say like the Roach or the Ravager is a skill-based unit, but like
Yeah.
I don't think that's fair to say. Like, I don't think the Roach or the Ravager is a skill-based unit. It's a very much a move unit. Like, so I don't know. I would kind of draw the line on like some of these and narrow that a little bit, because like I think that's really where the distinction lies. Like every race has excuse me, like all the races, like their units all take, some micro and a little bit of skill to use, right? But there's certain units, like the Marine, for example, that are highly dependent on how much you micro them and how good you are at positioning and things
not
like
a micro unit, sorry.
Yeah, not a micro unit. But yeah, I mean,
the number of times.
So that's why I would say like the Oracle, the Adept, I think Disruptor is totally fair to put in that list. Stalker, because of Blink, right? But I honestly have a hard time expanding the list beyond that. Even Tempest, I think, is like, that's kind of simple kiting. You know what I mean? Like,
I think the Tempest I can see in some situations, and in others I kind of have to disagree, because it's like,
that's why I said honorable mention. Like,
honorable mention.
Yeah. Fair.
Honorable mention, because it definitely has moments where it can be tricky to use, and they are kind of clunky, but they've also in more recent times made the acceleration rate and the turning point on it a lot more usable, so it's a lot less clunky than it used to be.
Yeah.
And also, like, air units, and particularly more fragile air units, things like Mutalisks, Vikings, have their own kind of like weird behaviors of clumping and having to avoid flash damage on those units is also something you have to consider, which for the Tempest doesn't specifically kind of apply because they're fairly tanky. But for something like the Phoenix, which is nowhere nearly as tanky and is still kind of a shorter range but highly mobile unit, it definitely applies to something like the Phoenix as well.
Okay, I did want to actually put up the list that I was working on earlier because I feel like this is important to at least breeze over a little bit. And time flies, and I'm shocked at how we just yap away and the time just goes.
Yeah, it does. It really does that.
But yeah, I did just kind of want to like briefly, I'll just go over these really fast, and then we can kind of talk a little bit about these. But yeah, I just think it was interesting to kind of look at like, obviously this is not an exhaustive list, but I think it's, a decent list of like the common openers that you see from the different races in each matchup. And I think it's kind of interesting to look at these and see what's available. So for Zerg versus Terran, we've got most of the Zerg stuff is really just different orders that you get the same stuff. So it's like, are you going hatch first? And there's small choices like, are we going a larger number of queens, with a smaller number of lings, or are we going for a smaller number of queens and a larger number of lings, maybe even some defensive roaches, right? Those are kind of your basic hatch first openers that Zerg has. But they've also got the pull first opener, which I think Rogue did recently, which I thought was really interesting. And then he goes for the third base at 22 supply super early. It's like little small differences and things like that, but like it does actually carry through to the mid game and how things look. Because if I remember right, he was facing a Turax Reaper, and because he went pull first, and he was able to deflect it very easily, which is pretty cool.
I think
They've also
something to
got
mention with Zerg specifically is like, and to some extent the other races, but it's very obvious with Zerg is when they take certain things in terms of supply. Like a 15 hatch is fairly different than going 17 hatch, or 12 pool is very different than going a 16 pool.
That's very different. I mean, 15 hatch,
But both of those,
it's not really that different.
but a 12 pool and a 16 pool are both pool first builds, but one is very all in and the other is much
Right.
more macro
That's very different.
potential.
Yeah. I didn't put 12 pool on here, and I really should have. But I feel like, my cutoff for this was, do we see it at the pro level? And I see Lambo use this and die at the pro level. I don't see it work.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I haven't seen a 12 pool actually work in a long time, so
Yeah, I don't remember
that's
the
why
last
it wasn't on the list.
That's fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway, other than that, we've kind of got like the Overlord drop-all-in, which one of the few aggressive options that Zerg still has. Unfortunately, we can't do the hatch first or the hatch tech version of this. So it's super all in now. Whereas before it was kind of semi all in, but you could drone out of it. Now it's super all in, where you literally take everything that you have and put it in Overlords, everything except for the drones. Then they've also got the gasless roach, very defensive build. You sacrifice the ling speed and you potentially have to deal with some annoyingness taking your third base. If there's a Reaper denying your third, things like that.
You rely on queens for that defense.
Right. And then we've also got the proxy hatch aggression builds, which are fun. There's a few varieties of those. And then there's also and this is one of my favorites. This is one of my favorites because it doesn't really do anything other than it makes the game weird. Like, so the proxy hatch to delay the natural, where you you make your natural in the enemy natural. I like that build because it doesn't really do a whole lot, but it does screw up their game plan. It doesn't really get the Zerg like ahead. Like they sacrifice a decent amount, but it throws a big wrench in the enemy build order and kind of messes with their plans.
I tell you what, I will say from like one of my absolute favorite moments in GSL was Rogue versus Creator, the GSL finals, and Rogue, like Creator comes down, throws down a pylon in Rogue's natural. Rogue moves his drone to his third base. Creator scouts that Rogue is taking his third base, then leaves, and Rogue cancels the hatchery. Takes the drone all the way into his opponent's, like just outside of his opponent's wall, builds his hatchery outside of his opponent's wall. Spine Crawler rushes him and wins. And it's like little like things like that are just such mind-bogglingly cool strategies that you can do if you know how your opponent plays, but you don't see on ladder all that much, and you won't see on ladder very often.
Yeah, totally.
But it's also the sort of thing that unfortunately I kind of feel like we're sort of missing in pro play. We have seen it every now and again. I'm reminded of the Maru versus Hero RSL that we had last year, where it went to like all 7 games, and I think it went to I think they had to do a bracket reset off it after it as well. So they played like 9 games back to back, and it was fucking incredible. Every game was different, and every game was like, I know how you play, so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to counter this, and then you're going to counter my counter, so I'm going to do this instead. So it was like
that's
a mind
always
game,
the coolest
game after mind game, and those are the moments that make this game so fucking incredible, and I wish we had more of them.
I really liked that was Dark versus Stats. I'm sure Brock remembers this. Their rivalry.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because they used to be on they were on KT Rolster together, if I remember right, or SKT1. I think SKT1.
That sounds familiar.
SKT1 sounds more likely. I don't think.
Yeah. Yeah, he was on KT Rolster. Like TY was KT Rolster, and I think I might be thinking of Classic. Classic and Dark were both on SKT1. I can't remember. Was Stats on SKT1? He might have been. I can't remember. But I just remember their rivalry and like the fact that they knew each other's builds really well. So it was just like, it was the coolest thing watching them try to get into each other's heads. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
That is always fun to see, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna skip right past the Zerg versus Protoss builds because they're the same.
They are, practically identical. Yeah,
we have the same. The only thing I could add here is what we watched from Rogue, which
just like
Ling Flood
Rogue
to deny the third and get nothing done.
you could also add just like underneath another tab, just Rogue.
Yeah, or just Rogue. Yeah. Be
just like Rogue
or Dark.
Rogue is a very unique Zerg is definitely a way to put it. He thinks about the game so differently than pretty much everyone else does.
Absolutely.
And Dark as well. If only he was back from military. I can't wait. Anyway,
Dark is always fun.
I know. Let's move on to the Terran builds here. So Terran versus Zerg. I feel like these are the main build choices that you have. You got your 3cc 111 Hellion Banshee, and you can do that into mech or into bio. Then you got your 3cc 211 into bio, obviously, right? And you got your delayed third 211, the classic Beyond build, right?
It's very rarely seen, but it does happen occasionally. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens occasionally. I'm glad that we're seeing it again because I was complaining. You remember me? I was like, "Where is the fucking Beyond builds? Like, where are they?"
It's come back. It's kind of come back meta a little bit recently, which is good.
And I like seeing that. And then we've got the fast second factory battle mech. And then we've got the CC first mech, usually tank mech. And then the 2-Rax Reaper, and there's Threeper or the other variations. You could also put 3-Rax Reaper here if you want, but I feel like that's not really fair because it's not really meta anymore. Nobody really does it. And then you got Proxy Rax. This also, I mean, Maru hasn't done this in a while. I don't know. I feel like we don't really see this that much, right?
Yeah, I
It
think
might
the
not be good if
proxy,
Maru doesn't do it.
the
Exactly.
proxy racks. I think I've seen it once in the last I don't know 9 months
Right.
at Pro Play.
Yeah. That's kind of my feeling too.
And a big part of that was just they nerfed bunkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Specifically,
And, well,
they
the
made
SCV
it you can't
build.
salvage bunkers while building, and the
Oh, that.
SCV
Yeah, I
are now
guess.
targetable as well while you're building it a lot more easily.
Yeah, I think that was really what brought it out
I
of the
think
meta.
I think both of those two things made a really big difference.
Because yeah, Maru, when Maru was doing that, every game or every other game, that was a time to play ladder as a
Yeah,
zerg.
yeah, it was.
I don't know if you guys are really aware of how bad that was, but holy shit. Penelope, the paranoia drone, it won me a lot of games.
You had a lot of fun with that.
So when I laddered at that point, I'll let you on a funny secret. The number of games that I won just based off the fact that I was Terran.
Oh.
I didn't proxy racks. I just based off
they
the fact
just see Terran and leave.
They saw Terran, immediately assumed I would proxy racks and hard turtled, and then when I didn't attack them, they were just so far behind that they died to a 7-minute push.
Because they just open with 2 spines.
yeah, they're open with 2 spines, 8 lings, 2 queens.
I feel so bad for those poor zergs.
2 bases for 3.5, 4 minutes doing nothing but
they're just fucking traumatized.
Yeah.
Oh man. You see Terran in the loading screen, there's this is how it starts.
This is how they get you every time.
All right, let's move on to the Terran versus Protoss builds. I feel like we've got Widowmine drop, we got single medevac bio drop, we got the Hellion drop, also 1 medevac. We got Proxy 2-Rax Marauder, we got the Cyclone Marine drop a la Beyond, and we've got the 3-Rax +1 stim timing combat shields optional. I guess you could put in there. Then we've got the occasional Banshee opener. Sometimes cloak, sometimes hyperflight, sometimes neither. I feel
usually it's
pretty...
cloak. I don't think I've ever seen it with hyperflight rotors and TVP, but it's usually cloak.
You might be right there. I don't know if I've.
The idea is to try and take advantage of the fact that Protoss has a tendency to open Twilight Council, so they kind of lack the detection.
Yeah,
I did see a game recently, but I was very surprised. But they did do that, and I was like, "What the heck is this?" And then it just died, and it's like, "Well, that was anticlimactic."
Yeah.
Dude, I cannot tell you how many games I lose just by not respecting Banshees.
Yeah, you and I played a game a little while back where I managed to keep my Banshee alive, and I just kept picking off drones. You really annoyed at me.
Yeah, you just kept killing my drones. I was like, yeah, I just died to the Banshee. I remember during that game we were in Discord together, and I'm just dying to this Banshee right now, I guess.
Yeah. I think that Banshee got at least 15 kills.
Yeah. It gets out of hand crazy fast. If you just don't respect it, it's really easy to just lose to the Banshee. I think the reason why is because it's such an easy thing to deal with that you just you take it lightly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
you don't think anything of it, and then start racking up kills.
Yeah. It's it's easy to deal with, but if you don't deal with it, you will die.
All right,
Protoss. Yeah. Protoss. Let's wrap things up. So Protoss versus Terran. I feel like these are the basic options that you have available. I feel like you've got 2-gate aggression, you got 2 to 4-gate blink aggression. Sometimes the 3-gate Goldilocks or whatever, right? Then we've got blink into Colossus. We got Stargate Oracle, although that's not a very popular opener. I guess it does still happen on occasion.
Yeah,
Stargate
we had
Phoenix,
Hero
Proxy
opened
Robo.
Stargate
Oh, Hero did that
Beyond.
recently?
Yeah, he did it against Beyond in the most recent GSL.
Oh, okay. Then we got like the 1-gate macro blink, usually into Storm with a fast third base. And honestly, call me crazy, but I feel like I've been seeing this a lot. This and
Yeah,
the blink aggression, I feel like, are the most
yeah,
common things.
they are
Yes.
by
And
far the
then
most common.
yeah, and then we got fast charge, which I have not seen in a while, but Miro assures me it does happen.
It
Yes,
does, yeah.
we actually just saw it yesterday with Shameless against Bunny decided to open fast charge. For whatever reason, did not get any splash and just immediately died because he didn't get any splash at all. So he just, I don't know, he also decided he didn't want to make any units as well, but that's his problem.
Right,
Fast
right.
charge works really good against like those committed 2-base pushes a lot of times, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very effective when you actually get units to use against a 2-base push. But Bunny just pushed him, and Shameless just kind of looked at it and went, "I have no units," and threw like 3 zealots at him and died.
Oh.
they had charge.
They did have charge, but they were 3 zealots versus like 60 supply worth of
But
marine
they
tech.
had charge.
Yeah,
That's
anyway.
what counts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a thing that happens. It's nowhere nearly as common as blink openers, but it is definitely a thing that happens, and it is a very solid build as long as you actually make units to defend.
Yeah. All right. So versus Zerg, I feel like Protos's options, the basic options, are as follows. We've got 2 to 3 Oracle into Blink, by far the most popular build right now. We've also got Oracle into Glaives, which is decently popular. Another decently popular option is Oracle into the 6 Fast Adepts without Glaives. And this is where you bank up the first 3 Adepts and then warp in another 3 when you finish the 3rd gateway, if I remember right. Brock knows how to do this build better than I do.
Yeah, you basically build 3 adepts off of the first gateway, 2 extra gates finish by the time warp gate finishes. So
Yeah.
you warp in 3 and the 6 just go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then and that build is nasty. Because if you're not ready for it, it's you lose a lot. So then we've also got the Oracle into Charge Lot Archon. This is not very common right now, but I mean, it's perfectly viable. Just nobody's doing it right now. But we do see it occasionally. We've also got the 2 Stargate into Fast Sky Toss, something that it's surprisingly come back into the meta after not being in the meta for a very long time. And we've also got the Stargate into Fast Third Base. And this is, we're talking insanely fast. We're talking like 3-minute third, which is really greedy, but you can actually do this. Then we've got the Glaive All In, the Charge All In, and the Blink All In. These are your Robo Twilight openers. Actually, to be honest, I forgot one. DTs. So these are
those,
all.
dude?
What was that?
How could you forget those?
How could you forget DTs? Every time I lose to them, I ask myself that question.
I feel like DTs are one of those things that they're good, but they're never meta, if that makes sense. It's not to say they're not viable.
Well, they kind of
but
rely
they're
on
one
the
of those
surprise,
things
right?
that, they rely on the
Yeah.
surprise and catching you out of position. And I kind of feel like DTs work in all matchups very much the same way. It relies on that surprise factor.
The other thing that makes DTs work is other Robo Twilight builds being popular. Because if other
That's
Robo
fair.
Twilight builds aren't popular, the second you see a Twilight, you're gonna be like, why the fuck do you have a Twilight? Are you fucking making DTs? Like,
Yeah,
it
that's
just
the
immediately
second
alarm
you see
bells
it-
go off.
The second you see a Twilight not upgrading, you're like, okay, hold on.
Yeah. I mean, they can fake it, but yeah.
Nah.
Yeah. Anyway. And then the other builds that I think are important to mention are Proxy 4-gate, which is rare but does happen. You know, we've got the flower and the Proxy blank all in, things like that, which I guess I could put in here, but I mean, this is really, Proxy pylon blank all in is really just a blank all in with no robo. Yeah. And then we've got Cannon Rush, of course, which, you know, I'm sure somebody is going to be like, meh, Cannon Rush isn't viable at the pro level. Yeah, it is, bro. Yeah, it is.
I mean, classic and
Yeah,
hero.
it's been more than proven at this point.
Yeah, they're absolutely viable. Not being used doesn't necessarily mean it's unviable.
Yeah,
We
100%.
saw it last year at EWC.
I mean, shit. Yeah, you remember how this progressed, right? Start a Legacy of the Void, everybody's like, you can't Cannon Rush at the pro level. Like, we would literally bring it up as an example of something that is only viable on ladder, right? And then
Surprise!
Haas comes along and we're like,
Oh, Haas.
And then people are like, maybe it's just Haas. Yeah, no, Haas just has some magic. He's got some secret sauce, you know? I don't know. He's just like an expert at cannon rushing. Nobody else can do it, though. And then other people started cannon rushing and winning games, and we're like, I guess cannon rush is just viable.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
to anyone who says cannon rushing isn't viable, I would ask you to look at EWC last year.
Yeah.
But Miro.
Rogue and Cyril both got cannon rushed, and both of them died multiple times. Cyril, I think,
Right,
died
yeah.
to...
That's right, yeah.
God, who did
That's
Cyril
right.
die to?
I forgot that I saw Cyril die to cannon rush in EWC.
Was it Hearthstone or Showtime? I think it was Showtime. No, it was Mana. It was Mana that cannon rushed him.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
It was Mana that cannon rushed. And same goes for Proxy Robo. Like, people say it's not viable. It is viable. I will direct you to SOS versus Cure.
Yeah, I mean, shit. Yeah, I mean, I could also just put Proxy Robo on both of these.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Let's be fair.
Proxy Robo is absolutely viable.
100%.
I just,
yeah.
It's one of those strategies that you pull out as a niche strategy to, surprise your opponent. It's not a strategy that you do every game. That's not how proxies work.
Yeah, like I would say, like these, like gosh, like all of these, like half of these strategies are like surprise strategies that you mix into like a best of 5. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's like, yeah. I mean, there's just like a lot of these. Anyway, I think an interesting thing to look at, and kind of one of the reasons why I brought this up, we're kind of running up on time here, but before we end here, I just wanted to reiterate the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the options that Zerg has here don't really lead you anywhere interesting. You know what I mean? Like, you've got these, the proxy things right here, right? Technically you could be rogue or dark, and that'll take you somewhere interesting. You could try to Ling Flood and deny the third, and you're gonna just equalize and not really do anything. These can technically just fucking win you the game. They're all-ins. Same with this. This is an all-in. That'll just win you the game. The rest of these, this is a slightly different, pull first, like 17 normal standard pull first. Like, these are kind of interesting in terms of they get you a different progression, and I really wish that we would see some more games from Dark, because he loved going pull first and really did something with that. But the other options, it's just like, okay, we've got Gasless, Roach, and then the Hatch first openers, and those are just very basic boilerplate. Like, it's just very standard macro. You know what I mean? You don't really have anything that you can do in the early or like leading into mid game kind of thing, right? Whereas all of these, you know, we've got some aggressive openers here. You know, we've got most of these. You know, there's some CC first battle mech and stuff like that, right? But I'd say like the majority of these, and yeah, you know, asymmetric balance obviously, but I do think it's worth pointing this out because it's like, you know, Zerg used to have some aggressive options. We don't
Yeah, they did.
anymore. That kind of feels shitty.
The biggest one that comes to mind is, of course, the hatch deck link drops.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest one. I think outside of that, it's very hard to say. Like the other big one would be early Roach Ravager timings, but after the nerf to Ravager morph times, that really fell out of favor.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't
it's
seen
not
him in years.
necessarily. It's not necessarily unviable. It's definitely not unviable on ladder, because
Yeah, oh
ladder is
yeah.
one of the places that you can do almost anything. But you almost never see that at a pro level now.
Yeah. Well, we do see, and I actually should have put on here. I don't know why the fuck I didn't put this. Like Roach all in. Like
Yeah,
that's
but
what we've
is
been
a
seeing
ritual
lately.
in
I
mid
don't know
game
why I
or is a
forgot this.
ritual in mid game or is ritual in early game?
No, we're talking early game.
Like
Yeah.
you drop 7 or 8 roaches and run across the map to try and.
I'm talking you don't drone your third. You know, maybe you don't even finish droning your nat and you just make a
And you're
bunch of
still on
roaches and
hashtag.
you go.
You don't get like roach speed or anything like that.
No, I don't think they have time for that. This is, you
Yeah.
know,
You
early
wouldn't.
hatch tech.
You need lair and everything for that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's layers way too expensive if you're doing a roach rush.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else that you guys want to add to this. I know I'm mostly focusing on Zerg gripes, but that is because I am a Zerg, so my bias is strong.
I
But
think.
I mean,
I think from the point of view of like TVP, I generally find feels very pigeonholed into just a couple of openers. Yeah, we have a few openers there, but the thing is, like every opener you do, you have to make sure that you can get tanks out in time for blink stalkers. Because if you don't get tanks out in time for blink stalkers, you die immediately to blink stalkers the moment they come across
yes,
the map. So everything you do has to be centered around making sure that you can get enough defense out to deal with blink stalkers.
that is actually a fucking amazing point. Like that is really salient because yeah, I mean that's the same reason why Zerg's openers are restricted in the early game. You know, I mean
Yeah.
this is true for both matchups, and I think it's kind of necessary to some extent for Zerg because if you don't restrict Zerg, like I mean the shit we can get away with is disgusting. Like it's scary, you know. So you can't just let Zerg do whatever they want, right?
Yes.
But like the amount or like how hard we're limited, it's really extreme. And in ZVP, it's the most extreme because the existence of the Oracle and the Adept early on, like that just forces you into a certain line that you like just have to go down. Like because you have to be able to afford enough queens and you have to be able to afford spores and you got to be able to have enough lings to push back the adept there, and you got to get your hatchery out early enough that it doesn't get denied, and you got to be able to do enough economy and droning to compete with Protoss Chrono Boost. And to do all of these things, there's only those like couple openers. That's the only thing that like it just gets narrowed down to only those options. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very telling, you know, how the meta shakes out, where like what you really need to consider, and this goes for Protoss as well, because like Protoss has to consider, can this strategy deal with a big marine tank push at my third
Or a
base?
Widow Mine drop early game.
No, not really.
You're like, yeah,
I mean, yes.
because they can just micro against it now.
Well, the reality is, like with Widowmine drops, it's like because Widowmine drops no longer are invisible, you don't
Yeah.
have to get detection out, so you just sacrifice one probe, or you
Yeah, that was the
hallucinate
joke I was making.
with your, or you just kill the Widowmine drop. Like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you don't need to do that. So you don't need to take that into account, but you do need to take into account
What's up, Keegard?
like other things,
Yeah, yeah.
and the big one is usually like that two base timing, or like the 5-1-1, which is a later two base timing, or the marine tank push, which is
Right.
an earlier
Uh, yeah, but I mean, like, just what you just said there, like, that's why I was making that joke, because it's like, I think, one of the ways that this could be counteracted would be, I don't want to just give Zerg and Terran free reign to do whatever they want like Protoss has. I want Protoss to feel a little restricted too. Like, I want there to be like an uncomfortable tension between what the different
Hey,
races want in the early game,
hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I have my best options, and I'm supposed to go with that. Okay, that's very restricting. Okay, you just don't understand. All right.
I'm restricted to going to the best option every time because why wouldn't I? It can handle everything. It's
Yeah,
so
exactly.
restrictive.
Gosh,
I do find
so
it
you do
very
get it.
frustrating when someone says to me, "No, I can't do this," because it's like, well, you can do this. Not
Yeah,
being meta or not being optimal doesn't mean you can't do it.
yeah. Like, they're two
Oh, for
different
sure. Yeah.
questions. Like, it might be the case that you can't do it, and that's why it's not meta, but it's not necessarily the case. And I think this is why these are on the list. Glaive all in, all the Robo Twilight builds. Like, yeah, we don't see them a whole lot in PvZ, but they're perfectly viable. Like, nothing about them changed. You know what I mean? Like, they're just not as popular because Oracle Blink is really good right now. Why would you not
Yeah,
do it
like,
every game?
I would even make the argument that like a proxy Stargate in TVP is viable for the same reason. Like you used to see the proxy Void Ray Shield Battery into Tempest thing. You
Yeah.
don't see that very often anymore, and it's not because it's not viable. It's because there are other better options.
Yep. I think my conclusion here is that I think it would be better if Protoss, for example, if the Widow Mine was invisible after its first shot, Protoss would actually be required to get detection, or to think about getting detection, to think about the choice of, shit, do I need to worry about getting detection here because I'm worried about a Widow Mine drop? Or am I okay with taking the gamble of just dying if it's a Widow Mine drop? Like, they need to think about those choices, because other races have that kind of stuff. I feel like a lot more than Protoss does currently. Not saying that Protoss can literally do whatever they want, but it kind of does feel a little bit like they can, and I think
Yeah,
that's a little bit of
I
a
would
problem.
I'd agree, because like from the point of view of Terran versus Zerg, right? If you open, there is definitely some openings where you'll do 3cc is going to be very vulnerable to really big roach timing attacks. 3cc is very very good, and there's a reason why it's meta at the moment. But that
Yeah,
doesn't mean that it doesn't have vulnerabilities, and you have to walk that fine line. And at the
yeah.
moment, it feel like Protoss has that fine line in the early game. I'm sorry, Brock.
No, I
I
get
mean,
you.
even with 3cc, I do have to say, like, when Overlord drops and stuff were in, like, it was a lot more vulnerable, but
Yeah,
it is
absolutely.
definitely like still vulnerable to, like you said, like roach timing early on. Like an early game roach all in will definitely deal with the 3cc build.
Yeah.
Yeah, any other closing points here, or are we thinking we're probably probably covered what we wanted to cover.
I think we've more than covered what we wanted to cover in the early game. I actually have to go,
Yeah.
so
It was a little bit disjointed and meandering, but I feel like we did cover what we wanted to talk about.
Yes.
All right, all
Yeah,
right. I wish we heard more from you, Brock. You were very quiet today.
you are very quiet. Yeah, I'm making sure everything's okay. You all right?
Oh, I'm good. I just felt like you guys were talking and wasn't trying to jump in and such.
That's true.
I mean,
We did have a lot to say.
You guys
are
probably
always
had more to
welcome.
say about this than I did.
You are always
Damn you,
welcome to interrupt
Protoss!
and go. You're always welcome to interrupt and go. No, you're fucking wrong. How dare you?
Exactly.
Well, actually, pushes glasses up my nose. See, the problem is,
Like, I mean, you could have done that. I have no problem with you doing that. And I
You
mean,
gotta
yeah,
gotta keep the
Wow.
Terran and zerg Whine in check.
the problem with that is I'd have to tell you you're wrong, and I can't really tell you you're wrong most of the time with what you said from my perspective. It's like, no, I get it. I see why people are saying these things. It's like, like me joking. It's like, well, I have my best opener. It's like, well, yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like, why wouldn't I do that? It just
Yeah.
does everything, and it's
Yeah.
like that's not good.
This
So,
is why I like talking to you guys, because we get to have honest conversations about this shit. Yeah. like
yeah.
like you remember when Zerg was like crazy good, and like what did I tell people? You know, I was like, I'm literally like invulnerable in the early game. like I don't give a shit what Terran's doing. You know?
I think one of the first conversations that you and I had ages ago was, and granted this wasn't over voice, it was like, Zerg is really strong. Yeah, they are really strong. Zerg is winning all of these tournaments. Yeah, okay, it's just one Zerg. No, it's not just one Zerg. There's like 6 different Zergs that are winning all of these tournaments. It's like, okay, yeah, you have a point.
Like Zerg was definitely in a good spot. It was kind of hard to deny that.
Zerg was definitely in a very good spot at that point in time. I do think that they over nerfed them, but I also think some of them.
And that's where our conversation ended up going, was like,
yeah,
the question is really, how too strong is Zerg? Is it a little bit too strong or way too strong? You know?
Yeah.
And we just overcorrected way too hard, and then like kept overcorrecting every year. It's like, what are we doing?
Because Cyril.
Yeah, because Cyril. Yeah, they just like wouldn't stop. Anyway, I think it is time to end the show. So I want to thank you guys for showing up once again. It was a blast as always.
Yay.
Yay.
Thank you for having me, as always. So
yeah, of course. And then I want to thank everybody who is watching this now or in the future. And hello, Keegert, I did see you there. And I'll catch up with you in a minute here. Yeah, we'll catch y'all next time. Hope y'all enjoyed.